I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting for August 5th, or no, for August 12th, 2021 to order. Can we have a roll call, Ed?
Ed, you want to close the doors?
I'll get it. Okay.
Mr. Magrino will not be here, and Ms. Corbeil will not be here tonight. Mr. Salepis?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Wiley?
Here.
Mr. Mills?
Here.
Mr. Carter-Phillips?
Here. Thanks, Seth.
Yep.
First thing in our docket is the approval of minutes for the last meeting, which was held June 10th, 2021. Does anybody have any corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, can I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that the minutes for the June 10th, 2021 meeting be approved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 3, the reports and correspondence. I see there are none, and apparently there aren't any site plans or subdivisions filed for review. Is that correct, Ed?
That is correct.
The agenda is approved. As any corrections to the agenda tonight?
No.
Okay. Are there any audience comments that are not relegated to any agenda item outside the agenda? Hearing none and having there isn't any old business, we'll move on to new business. And the first one being the Planning Commission recommendation for the Ross Caputo Lot Line Adjustment Plan, number 1 on Turkey Foot Road.
Charles and Kelly Caputo and Matthew Rost, owners of adjoining lots in the Lasanti plan, lots 2 and 3 of the Lasanti subdivision along Turkey Foot Road, are seeking township approval just to adjust the lot line between the two lots. The shared lot line between the two lots is shifting a little bit to the west, decreasing the size of the Caputo lot by a small little area. The Caputo lot becomes 2.6 acres. The Ross lot increases in size to 3.2 acres. It's a simple lot line adjustment, and this area of Peters is zoned LD, low-density residential, half-acre minimum. Both of these lots exceed that half-acre minimum, and staff's recommending the Caputo-Ross lot line adjustment be approved, subject to those 3 conditions listed in my report to you dated August 5, 2021.
Seems pretty straightforward. Any comments from the commissioners or questions for the staff?
I'll make a motion for Planning Commission to recommend the Ross Caputo Lot Line Adjustment Plan number 1.
I'll second. We have a motion and seconded. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item B, Planning Commission recommendation again for the Ferraro-Riddle Subdivision Plan number 1, located on Thompsonville Road. Seth?
Nicholas Farrar and Ashley Riddle are coming before the Planning Commission tonight seeking a recommendation to Township Council for a subdivision of 214 Thompsonville Road, 210 Thompsonville Road, and on behalf of their neighbors, the Harrisons, 216 Thompsonville Road. Currently, what we have existing, 214 Thompsonville Road, this large parcel here, it's a non-conforming existing flag lot. It only has about 30 feet of right-of-way on Thompsonville Road. Typically, we require 50 feet for a flag lot pole, but there is a large portion of land in the back. They're seeking to divvy up that parcel in the back, that large portion of land, with their existing house at 210 Thompsonville and again at 216 Thompsonville, to kind of spread that land amongst those 2 properties while still remaining a buildable lot in the rear at 214 Thompsonville. As it stands today, Lot 1 is 1.1 acres, Lot 2 is 4.7 acres, and Lot 3 is 1.1 acres. Per the subdivision plan, Lot 1 will become just under 3 acres in size. Lot 2 will be just over 2.5 acres in size, and Lot 3 will be just under 2 acres in size. So, making much more of an even distribution of those property sizes. We're not creating any new lots with this plan, just basically a shifting of lot line. making that non-conforming lot slightly smaller. We're not expanding on the non-conformity by any means, so no need to go to the zoning hearing board for variance. We're just taking that lot size and making it smaller, but not decreasing the frontage on Thompsonville. Staff is making a recommendation that the Planning Commission recommend the approval for the Ferrero-Riddle Subdivision Plan Number 1, subject to the 6 conditions listed in my August 5th report.
Thanks, Seth.
And I want to mention one interesting aspect of this. In our non-conforming lots of record section in the Township ordinance, we preclude new single-family or accessory structures being built on a non-conforming lot that is adjacent to a conforming lot under the same ownership. The intent is to basically eliminate non-conforming lots. You just can't build next to your house if you own both of them. So we are recommending, as condition number 6 here, that they put a condition on the subdivision plan that we won't issue a building permit for either an accessory or a principal structure on that non-conforming lot unless it's under separate ownership. I believe it is their intention to sell that lot to someone to build on it, so it's just making sure that that process is followed through properly.
Any questions or comments from the commission? For the audience's sake, I'm not calling up any agents or anybody that's being an applicant if we don't have any questions, but you feel free to come up if you feel you need to.
I'll make a motion for Planning Commission to recommend the Ferrero-Riddle Subdivision Plan Number 1, subject to conditions set forth in the planning staff's August 5th, 2021 memo.
I'll second.
We have a motion and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item C, Planning Commission recommendation again for the Waltz Subdivision Plan Number 1 located on the Cones Road.
This is another circumstance of an existing non-conforming lot. Matt and Courtney Waltz are owners of both 216 and 224 McCombs Road. Currently, 224 McCombs is an existing non-conforming lot. It meets the lot size and depth requirements, but again, it doesn't have the adequate frontage on McCombs Road. Where this subdivision plan differs is that the existing house lot that the Wolfs also own, they have enough lot frontage to create 2 flag lots here. The existing house at 224 would become slightly, smaller in width, but would still be within, I think, 90-plus feet, so it's well beyond the 50-foot minimums for a flag lot. The existing non-conforming lot would gain a little bit of lot frontage to bring it into compliance with the zoning ordinance to no longer make it a non-conforming lot. I believe the Woltzes want to build a house on the lot in the back, so in order to get around that section that I mentioned on the last subdivision plan, this lot needed to be brought into compliance with the zoning ordinance, and that's what they're doing per this subdivision plan.
Great idea.
Staff is making a recommendation that the Planning Commission recommending the Waltz Subdivision Plan Number 1 be approved, subject to the 4 conditions listed in my August 4th report. Here to answer your questions. The really interesting portion about this one is that there's an existing driveway that would go over the lot that would be coming into conformance. We're just requiring that they establish a driveway access easement. It's pretty straightforward.
Thank you, Seth. Okay, pretty straightforward, like Seth says. Are there any comments or questions from the boards or the finance staff?
Nope.
I have one question, actually.
Yeah.
With the new frontage, is there room for a second driveway, or would that be a shared entrance for the new lot?
I think the intention is to maintain a singular entrance off McCombs and then just quickly split off into its own driveway that goes back up to the larger of the 2 parcels.
Questions or comments? Unless you guys
Make-
good with that?
No.
All right. Again, I'm not going to call up the applicant or applicant's agent since we don't have any questions.
I'll make a motion to that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the Wold subdivision plan as outlined in the memo dated August 4th, along with the 4 conditions noted in the memo.
Second.
We have a motion and seconded. Can I hear all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item D, Planning Commission recommendation for the Patton subdivision plan number 1, located at 158 Bauer Field Road.
This is a subdivision plan that should look familiar to you. This was in front of Planning Commission earlier this year for a recommendation to the Zoning Hearing Board regarding lot width at the right-of-way. Mr. Patton was requesting a variance to make one of these 3 lots that he's creating as part of this plan be less than 50 feet at the right-of-way. He ultimately did receive his variance approval on March 16th of this year, so now he's coming back before the Planning Commission with the final subdivision plan in accordance with that Zoning Hearing Board decision. Mr. Patton is taking the existing lots that has the house on it that's been in his family since, I think the late 1800s, one of the older houses in the township, and he's carving off 2 separate parcels around that, the first of which is located to just the north of it. It's a conforming lot by every standard, width, area, depth, all those criteria. Lot number 3 is the lot in question that received the variance from the Zoning Hearing Board. It only has 40 feet of lot width at the right-of-way. Typically 50 would be required for a flag lot. But the Zoning Hearing Board felt that he'd made a compelling case and granted him a variance, so we're here this evening. In accordance with that Zoning Hearing Board decision, the only special criteria that the Zoning Hearing Board placed on this subdivision plan would be condition number 8 in my report, just that lot 3 could not be further subdivided to create additional driveway access to Bauer Hill. If they wanted to do maybe a little subdivision in the back to shift that lot line, that's fine, but just no new driveway access within that 40-foot of lot frontage on Bauer Hill. Bauer Hill is a collector road, so this also includes a modification for driveway access for both lots 2 and 3. Staff, feels that there's adequate site distance out there. They provided that as an exhibit during their Zoning Hearing Board application to make sure they weren't, creating a problem out there. We're just going to ask that they, again, label that on the subdivision plan. But staff is making a recommendation that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the Patton subdivision plan number 1, subject to the 8 conditions listed in my August 4th report.
Yeah, I think the board liked this one when it came. I think it was unanimous on the...
I'm sorry Rocco's not here tonight. He was really passionate about this the first time around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Any questions or comments?
I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission recommends Patton subdivision plan number 1, subject to the conditions set forth in the August 4th, 2021 memo.
I'll second.
We have a motion and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item E, Planning Commission, this is a recommendation again for the Cushy Lot Consolidation Plan Number 1 located at 339 Springdale Road. Ed?
Alan Cushy, owner of 2 adjoining lots at 339 Springdale Road, seeking township approval to consolidate those 2 lots into 1 lot. Proposed plan simply combines the 2 separate lots into one 1.101 acre lot, Lot 1. This actual consolidation plan eliminates a non-conforming land that's a landlocked lot. You can't get to it other than through Mr. Cushy's lot. So this area of Peters Township is zoned LD. It's minimum half acre, and this lot is 1.101 acres. Simple consolidation. Staff's recommending we approve the subdivision subject to the 3 conditions in my August 5 memo.
Okay. These are the kind we love. Any questions? Can I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend the Cushy Lot Consolidation Plan Number 1, as detailed in the planning staff memo dated August 5th, 2021, subject to 3 conditions detailed today.
And I'll second the motion.
So we have a motion and seconded. I hear ayes for all those in favor.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now to the main event. The F, Planning Commission recommendation for the special exception application case. And this is by the 1781 Club located at 681 Church Hill Road.
1781 Holdings LLC is an entity that has the Scenic Valley Golf Course, 681 Churchill Road, under contract to purchase. As part of that purchase, we have brought a subdivision plan to Planning Commission earlier this year, carving off a little section of property around the clubhouse, parking lot, maintenance building. In relation to that, they are requesting a special exception from the Township Zoning Hearing Board. We're coming before Planning Commission this evening for a recommendation to the Zoning Hearing Board. This special exception request is for a private recreation facility use. That could be a number of different things, but in this instance, it's kind of a clubhouse restaurant with a swimming pool, pickleball courts in the back, and parking lot associated not only with those uses, but also the golf course as well. In my staff report, I kind of laid out all of the criteria that they need to abide by to obtain a special exception or potentially obtain a special exception from the Township Zoning Hearing Board. There are also supplemental regulations for this type of use in terms of development criteria, those types of things. There's also buffers and parking standards, a number of different criteria that come into play on this one. This one in particular, it raises a couple of different questions and concerns from staff. We've spoken with residents nearby, and I think really what we've kind of focused in mostly is the impact that the swimming pool and the pickleball court are going to have potentially on adjacent property owners. Now, when we have developments of this nature against residential properties, we buffer, we put up potential sound attenuation devices. We try to take every measure we can to ensure that we're mitigating that impact on those adjacent properties as much as we possibly can. In this case, with the swimming pool and the pickleball court, the applicant is proposing a sound wall to be located next to the swimming pool, between that pool and those adjacent properties. This wall would also be integrated into the fence that would be typically around a swimming pool anyways. And then, that would be all adjacent to the pickleball court facility, which would be located opposite from those residential properties. Focusing a little bit more here on this pool area with the pickleball and the maintenance building. There's also a buffer implemented as well, high-level, low-level plantings and screenings. That sound wall is shown in that buffer. It's a little hard to see here just because there's so many different graphics on top of one another. But that is fully integrated into that buffer area.
Seth, can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
Can you just explain to everybody what a sound wall is and
Yeah,
how it works?
we saw this 2019, 2020 with the Pooch Pit facility. This sound attenuation wall really is intended to absorb sound and stop it from getting to those adjacent properties. It could have the appearance of a privacy wall that can come in different colors, different materials, but I think integrated with that landscape buffer, you're really not going to notice it that much. We've not determined today how tall that wall needs to be. One of the recommendations in our report is that we kind of open it up to staff interpretation of how tall that needs to be, working with the applicant moving forward. I think we would have that figured out before we potentially come back to Planning Commission for site plan approval if they get their special exception approval on Tuesday night. So that would be one of those many elements that we're looking at moving forward. Looking at the buffer area, outside of that swimming pool and maintenance building, it opens up another question that it's currently unresolved, and it's not one that we're going to be able to decide here tonight. It's really a decision by the Zoning Hearing Board. What we have currently is what we believe as staff to be an existing non-conforming parking lot that is adjacent to those residential properties. This type of development, if it were to happen on bare ground today, would require a 25-foot buffer A from those residential properties. that buffer A would preclude any parking facilities. This existing parking lot's only about 10 feet from those residential property lines, so obviously, there's a difference there that it doesn't make up with making it a non-conforming parking lot. The question then becomes, can they maintain that parking lot line with this proposed development? It is, staff, we have our opinions, but the township solicitor has weighed in and said it's really going to be up to the zoning hearing board on Tuesday night whether or not that is an existing non-conforming that can continue to exist in its current location. If it's determined not to be allowed to do so, then the applicant's going to have to adjust otherwise and figure out what that means for them. That doesn't mean they can't get their special exception approval. They just might have to do something else as part of that special exception approval. Maybe shift the parking lot, do other things, come up with a different parking configuration to abide by that 25-foot buffer A. So that is a question to be resolved by the zoning hearing board on Tuesday night, August the 17th. As part of that, there's also some new additional parking spaces that are going to be potentially located within that same buffer A. Again, that's something that needs to be resolved by the zoning hearing board on August the 17th. Moving kind of towards the other end of the site, this project also includes a pretty comprehensive redesign, reconstruction of the existing clubhouse located on the golf course. I'll show some inspirational images and some elevations here in a minute. And they're also proposing a kind of a drive-through canopy to create more of a clubhouse type of feel, a community club feel there at the entrance.
Hey, Sean, while we're showing this, I just got a recommendation on the plan that I'd like the commissioners to consider.
Okay.
So at the end of the landscaped area, I would like to see landscaping continuing up the whole side and just not stop as an additional buffer for those residents. So I'd like to see the landscaping continue up past I guess where it stops.
Yeah, along that entrance drive.
Yeah, the whole way on so the residents are protected.
That entrance drive continues along quite a number of properties. Somewhere, where's my?
It's zoomed.
I'm zoomed in as far as I can. About here is where that buffer currently stops, and it's essentially bare all the way up until you get to Churchill. There's a little bit of a berm there.
So maybe those two additional houses.
Those two additional property lines, basically
right
all the way up to the intersection with Churchill.
Correct. Yeah. I think that'd be a nice protection for those homeowners.
A couple things there. One, we will probably need to work with those homeowners if this special exception goes forward. There's not much room there for landscaping, so some of the landscaping might need to work onto the back of the lots.
Yeah.
So you're not saying it has to be 10 feet or 25 feet, you're just saying to
additional landscaping.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly not going to fit a 25-foot buffer.
You're not going to be able to do the 25, but something. Yeah.
What's the topography there? Is it steep?
Fairly level.
Yeah, you could certainly get some landscaping in there. Again, to Ed's point, it just kind of...
You might not be able to go as thick.
Right. But if there was some cooperation by those adjacent property owners to give them a little bit of space to put those plants, we could accommodate something.
How will lighting affect the overall, that boundary? Because with the entrance area, the clubhouse, the parking lot, the pool area, the pickleball courts, all have some type of lighting.
Yep. I have a photometric plan that we'll look at here in a couple slides. Yeah.
One more thing on the buffer. It's important to note that along that non-conforming edge of that parking lot, they are proposing. Go ahead.
I mean, there's an existing buffer there.
It's important to note, though. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the landscape plan has the appearance of a fully reconstructed buffer. There's an existing buffer out there today that has some heavy vegetation that is obviously better than replanting an entire new buffer that's going to take years to grow and mature. So the intent from the applicant and from staff is to preserve as much of that existing buffer as we possibly can, and there are some gaps that need to be filled in. And supplement it wherever we can. We've also put a condition in here that if we do that, the future property owner needs to be under agreement that, should some elements of that existing buffer die off because they're older trees or something, that he needs to be ready to supplant those with additional landscaping to bring that back into a compliant buffer.
Want to add that as a condition 10 then?
Yes, please.
About the
Additional buffer
Extended.
up those two lots.
Okay. To Conrad's questions about site lighting, here's a photometric plan shown on the screen. We'll start by the pool house and then work our way up the parking lot. But, there are some building lights and some freestanding lights shown on the property. These should be, as shown, LED lights that are downward focused. The inclusion of that buffer, the fencing, the wall should help prevent a lot of that site lighting from bleeding over onto the adjacent property lines. Same thing along the parking lot as well. That existing buffer along with the replanted buffer in those gaps should help with preventing a lot of that parking lot light from getting on.
Similar to what we had at the Subaru.
Correct.
Up in the back.
Yeah. And as you come in through that driveway as well. They are showing some lights here along the driveway, but again, those are downward facing, projected away from those property lines. And potentially with the inclusion of this additional landscape buffer, that would only help prevent that light from getting onto those adjacent properties. Looking into some elevations, kind of the overall design of the redesigned clubhouse. It's going from kind of an existing, I think just a siding, maybe a wood-sided building, to more of a combination stone, metal, more of a contemporary look. And I'll get to some inspirational photographs from the applicant here in a second. The overall layout of the clubhouse isn't changing dramatically, but they are doing a redesign and a slight addition to it. As you can see here, it's, again, more of a modern take on the clubhouse as opposed to what's there today.
Seth, while you're there, is there
Yeah.
anything about the building that is out of character? I mean, that,
The only-
the pitch or anything?
The only
like
element
that?
as part of that we are discussing in our conditions and staff report is condition number 9. We would place a condition on there as part of the special exception. We're recommending at least that condition be placed on there, that both the proposed clubhouse and this new maintenance, fitness, and concessions building, the building materials be limited to brick, stone, or cement board siding, or a combination there within. We don't want a fully metal building.
There's no problem with
No
that.
height problems,
Okay.
no height, out of line with what's there currently today. And, I'm not sure how familiar all of you are with the existing golf course, but, there's some existing buildings on there that are worse for wear, the maintenance building in the back, so I think this would be an added benefit to that area. These are just some general inspirational photographs from the applicant, giving you an idea of potentially architectural designs. I think that might be a little bit higher than what we'd see out there. This might be more in line with what they would be thinking about, especially with that, that little elevated portion off to the back right there. And just, I don't know if we're going to be growing palm trees in southwestern Pennsylvania, but an idea is with the swimming pool and the maintenance building would look like, along with the proposed canopy for the driveway as well. Just kind of go over everything, circle background. The applicant, again, they're seeking a special exception approval from the Township Zoning Hearing Board that's going to be going before the Zoning Hearing Board August 17th, this upcoming Tuesday. If they do get that special exception approval, we'll be back to Planning Commission at some time in the future for a site plan approval. A lot of the elements that we've looked at tonight are kind of more of a general conceptual level. We'll get into the details of the nitty-gritty of engineering, grading, sanitary, all those items before we come back to Planning Commission for site plan approval. Staff is making a recommendation that the Zoning Hearing Board approve the special exception request. Subject to we have 11 total conditions. There were 9 in your report, but we've since come up with 2 additional conditions. The only 2 additional conditions in your report, per your report, the site plan shall comply with all zoning ordinance requirements. That would be condition number 10. And that is really intended to force the hand of the Zoning Hearing Board to make a clear decision about that existing parking lot. We were concerned that if we didn't, clearly recommend that they make that decision, it could be a little ambiguous on their end. So they really need to determine whether or not they feel that that existing parking lot can maintain basically its footprint and its nonconformity. Condition number 11 that we would be recommending is that the applicant, to the satisfaction of the township's consulting traffic engineer, shall provide the township with a PM peak hour chip generation rate of the proposed development, just to determine whether or not we need to engage in a traffic study. Parking for this type of use is determined through a parking needs analysis. The applicant went with two separate consulting traffic engineering firms. They came up with the same traffic number, the same parking number of 153 parking spaces. That's what they're providing on the site. Our consulting traffic engineer has concurred that that is an appropriate number, but we want to make sure, even so, with a traffic study in the future, if it may or may not be needed, we just need a trip generation rate from them to make that determination.
Eddie, does this hit a traffic impact fee, or we'll discuss that when site plan approval?
That would be a site plan,
Item.
Approval consideration, yeah.
And the numbers went up, so probably.
potentially, yes.
Potentially.
And Seth, you're going to add, if I understood you correctly, you're going to add 11, you're going to add 12 is mine?
So that would be the planning commission's recommendation to the zoning hearing board, could be your 12th one.
Okay.
With the inclusion of my 10 and 11.
You're 10 and 11 plus
Correct.
12.
Okay. Okay, good.
Okay. So back on your synopsis here, it says the applicant will conduct a parking study during the summer after the facility is fully open for 1 year to calculate. That would be 2023, right?
That would be sometime in the future. Mike Mudry, our consulting traffic engineer, is here. He can maybe talk about this in a little bit more detail, but basically saying, we want to make sure that this type of use, taking everything in consideration, the golf course, the restaurant, the clubhouse, the swimming pool, the pickleball courts, doesn't create a parking need that the site doesn't accommodate for. And the best way to do that would be a high chip generation time period, which would be the summer after this thing's fully built out.
Okay.
And if it comes back that there's some issues, we'll have to address it accordingly.
How would we address it accordingly? Expansion of parking then?
In your conditions.
I think in the one condition that I recommended, the set that he put on the plan, and that's using these ITE numbers. Like, they were using the normal number that you would use. There's also a high-end number. So I said, hey, I agree that the consultant's numbers, the normal numbers, the 153. But if you went with the highest number, it's 45 more spaces. So just to try to have a little bit of comfort in this, since it is a special exception, we can put a special condition on this. The whole purpose of the parking study would be after they're open for a year, go back and look at it, then show us a space where they could put a 45-space parking lot or more parking in the future, and if it's needed, they have to do it in a year.
Yeah, and that's on there as condition 6B, that they identify as part of the site plan approval a potential area for future parking.
Okay.
Okay, the way I'm going to approach this is that I'm going to ask that the applicant's agent or representative maybe come up to the podium and introduce him or herself, and then the commissioners can ask either yourself or the planning staff questions.
Happy to.
After which, I will invite the audience to come up and make comments as they see fit, one at a time, of course. And each time you come up, I would ask that you give us your name and address. But are there anything that the commissioners would like to point out?
I just want to say that I'm going to recuse myself because I'm involved with this development.
Okay. Thank you, Ted. So, please introduce yourself.
Sean Crean, longtime resident of Peters Township, and live right down the street on Churchill from the club. Excited about trying to keep the asset that we have in town to be a nice one and take it to the next level, right? Appreciate all the comments. We're super sensitive to all of the feedback that we've gotten to date, respectful for the commentary. I honestly, I'm happy to answer any questions and all that, but I only have one real, comment relating to some of the conditions. And I guess specifically one around the parking, right? So I get it. We don't know what we don't know, so it meets the minimum. Maybe we end up needing more based on evidence. Happy to participate in traffic study and parking need assessment and all that. But the idea of carving out a place for 45 additional spots in a situation that we're in up there, it really isn't feasible. But we're happy to be accountable to that by offering valet service and whatever to, use the space that we do have more efficiently and appropriately to accommodate the need. So I would just ask that the specifics around, the reserve of a 45-spot space be removed, and that we would have to solve and propose to you the solution to the problem at the time a need is identified. And, that may be valet or whatever else that we can come up with. So that's my only ask. Other than that, I think the feedback is fair. I did note from preliminary conversations, we had talked about a 10 p.m. Time frame for close, and I get it. I'm respectful of the feedback that we got, and if that's 9 o'clock's what we're looking for, then I'm good with that. I just noted that to be slightly different than discussed, but I'm good with it. I think the landscape buffer is a real issue, right, as it relates to the 10-foot versus 25. I mean, I know it's not the topic for tonight. We'll address it on Tuesday, but that's almost an unsolvable one if we can't get past that. So that's it. Any questions for me?
We could talk about that valet. Mike, our traffic engineer, what do you think about that? When you're doing valet, you don't need as much room. You can get more cars in a smaller space.
It's just got to be, we got to think of a way. If we figure out we're going to need more space in a year, how do you know the valet is going to work? I mean, we could say it, but how are you going to show it? And I mean, you can't test the valet until you actually run it. You know what I'm saying? It's theoretical with a valet. My whole point was, and I don't know if you have to physically grade it, maybe just show how you would do it. If you had to put 45 more spaces on that lot, could you just put an imaginary dashed line and say, we've got room and this is where it would go? We're not going to grade it out, but maybe that's part of it. If we need it, we're going to push this grading out and this is how we would do it. It's just something that's there that we know that, and then they would commit to doing, to figuring out how to get 45 more spots on that site somewhere. And I don't know if that's possible. That's why I'm throwing it out.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I'm game to go back with our team and try to push for more. Getting 45 seems near impossible given the terrain and the whole lay of that land. So that's why I'm concerned, yet committed to solve the problem. And I've seen valet work super successfully in many other circumstances. And, just to elaborate, in a valet situation, since we will have, a lot going on, right, at any given point in time, we would literally block off bottom third of the parking lot, right? And as soon as we hit capacity on the 2/3, then we would start valeting and not even let them park there. So then you're using that to double park and use the space that we do have much more efficiently than just letting them go park and then trying to curve back. So that would be our, just anecdotally, we'll have to go and show you how that would go and see what that yields. Our thought that on the bottom third, we would yield about 30 spots doing that, right? Not 45. So we have to go back and think about that. And we didn't do any math. It's just been, conversation about how we would manage that situation. So that's what we came up with to date. We're mindful of it. We don't want that experience even for the people that come, right?
Is the parking capacity, for normal use, like for the golf course, for the swimming pool, is it an event that's going to max it out?
Yeah, I would hope. I mean,
did you put the thing about the event too? I think we already put something else in about events too.
Yeah, I mean, that was to what Sean's referring to. Condition 6C says applicant shall agree to provide valet parking for large events over 250 people.
And that's for anything.
Right.
Like even with this, anytime they do over 250 people in an event, we think that they would need to do valet to be able to fully utilize the parking area, because they'll over-park at 150.
A certain number of spaces are going to be occupied. Let's say there's normal, golf, or people going to swim, or use the facilities. Will you have an event concurrent?
Oh no, that's we don't have a big plan for event holding. That doesn't mean we won't have any, but the primary commitment we have is to the members and the community that come and use the facility on a regular basis. That's not to say we wouldn't have it. We're going to have outings and things like that. So there will be events, don't get me wrong.
So the parking, let me clarify. So the parking that they use, they go to the IT parking manual. It's kind of like the trip generation manual, except it's for parking. And it's just a normal golf course. is the land use. So it's accounting for, your typical golf outings throughout the day, swimming pool and a clubhouse and a pro shop and a small restaurant. This is just a normal golf course. That's where the 153 came up with. The reason I said maybe the 45 more, the data in the ITE, it's limited. It's not like a shopping center where there's a couple thousand data points we have. The ITE stuff for this golf course parking has 12 studies, and they were all done in 1980 to 2000, not even in Pennsylvania. So that's why I'm saying, hey, it's a special exception. I agree with everybody that this is the number out of the little manual that we use, but that's the average number. There's a high-end number. I'm saying, hey, what if we're not average based on these 12 data points? What if this turns out to be, and I don't have enough experience. We haven't studied enough golf courses for me to say parking in the last 20 years has gone up or down. I have no idea.
Plus,
So that's what I'm saying. I think it's nice that this is special exception. It gives us a little room to say, hey, if the IT 12 studies from 20 years ago.
But you were talking about a little restaurant. This looks like a big restaurant.
And that's my other concern. When they talk about these land uses that they did in these studies, they don't tell you how big these restaurants were and things like that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
This is very generic information. And your consultants did the same thing I would have done if you'd have hired me. I'd have come out with 153 also. We'd have come up with the same number. So the numbers aren't wrong. It's just I'm saying the data that we're relying on is a small data set. And because it's a special exception, I think it's prudent to say, hey, let's come back in a year and see how they're operating. And if they have more, maybe there's a reasonable number of more. And then the whole event thing, a wedding or a banquet or whatever, we covered that separately. If it's 250 people or more expected in an event, we think you need to valet it anyway, because with catering and staff and maybe even some other things going on at the same time, even though the event's going on, it's the primary thing, you're probably going to need to valet once you get above 250.
In addition to the paved parking and paved and lined parking, is there grassy areas available that?
It's tight.
It's tight. There really isn't. That's.
So the topography.
That's why.
Like below where that pavilion is.
Yeah, you just can't. That's 18 feet down or something. I mean, it's and that's what would really exactly like add a whole dimension on, let alone, we're already under the plan moving the number 10 tee box over to accommodate some of the building. And so that's coming over into that pavilion area. We're already using some of that, so we're really limited to. No, that one's working out just great, actually. There's a nice big mature tree in there we're able to keep. It's, we're trying to really make sure that stays as true as it can be. So that's why I'm calling out the requirement for the geography versus solving the problem. Another business I have parking concerns. We're implementing a shuttle right now, right? I'm providing a free shuttle, courtesy shuttle service. That solves a lot of parking problems. So, the parking problem, I respect, is your problem here today in the context of this, but it's really our problem, right, that we have to solve for the business itself. So we're going to be all over it to make sure that people aren't, coming in there, driving around. We're going to implement other measures to make sure it's an appropriate experience. So, that's what I have to offer. I just really have concerns over the geography given our limitations, just reserving physical space. So.
Is the golf course going to stay public, or is it intended to become a club-like?
So it will be membership based. I will say this: our commitment is to make it a community, family-oriented place. This golf course isn't going to be the next Oakmont, right? This isn't. We're not trying to make it something it's not. That being said, we want it to be a really great place to, for families to hang out and meet each other and all. So we will be accommodating memberships that are at all levels of, socioeconomic combinations, whether they're interested in, dining and recreation or they're into golf, whatever those combinations are, we will have something that fits their.
Pure public golf course, walk in, make a tee time.
will not be able to just walk in and make a tea time. Our intention will be to recruit them on as members, so that we're not just going to say, sorry, you're not welcome here. Our intention will be to see if they have an interest in any, whatever membership suits their interests.
Any other questions for Mr. Crean while we have him up?
Just relative to that parking, I'm not sure that the way we have it worded with 45 shown somewhere is the right thing to do, so I'm going to think about how we handle that.
I agree with him. It's his problem.
Right. Knowing that topography that we're dealing with there, I don't know where you can get 45 more spaces.
No, we'd have to come in and put double stackers in or something. What do we, we're going to be limited that way, but
I guess
I think the reality in my mind as an entrepreneur and the way this goes is you're happy to have that problem and you're going to embrace it as it comes at you, and we're going to put the shuttle in place. We're going to ask for opportunities to valet and utilize it as much as we can, and literally catch them right in the portico and park their car for them, and we'll make it work, right? That's where my head is. But
I'm with you, and I'm sure there's audience comments. Let us think about it here before you guys make your final recommendation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Again,
Can you figure out how to work?
remember, this is what we're going to be doing tonight is making a recommendation to the zoning hearing board with conditions. Whether they listen to us or not is totally different. So again, I'd like to have maybe open up the floor to audience comments, and to welcome to approach you to the podium, both are live. Just give us your name and your address, and let us know what's on your mind. We'll start with this side of the room. Does anybody on this side of the room like to come up and say anything or ask any questions to the staff? What about the middle? Anybody in the middle wants? Yes, go on. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Ron Schaffner, and I live at 314 Bridle Trail, which backs onto the golf course, a little further down than what is shown here. And I do have a couple of questions. We've seen a list of 11 conditions here. Those were not in the materials that were available online, at least when I downloaded and printed them. Can we get those? Can we get a copy of the conditions?
Yeah, I can. Once we provide our formal recommendation tonight after Planning Commission, I'll put that Planning Commission decision letter up in the same Dropbox that I put everything else in.
Okay.
And then my staff report to the zoning hearing board typically only goes to them. I don't send that out to the public until we get to the hearing.
That's fine.
Yeah, so we'll put the Planning Commission decision letter up there.
Okay. Second question, the plans that I downloaded and printed are not the same as we're seeing here. There are differences in the type and the format of the buildings, and there's also something unclear about it, but that's a separate question. Can we get up-to-date plans?
They're up there now. They're up. I put them up there this afternoon. I
It
apologize.
was at 4 o'clock, Ron. It was late this afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's, I guess that'll teach me to be prepared ahead of time.
But they're not that different from what was up there. They added, as
Just the pickleball
the
court was
staff,
moved, yeah.
hold on a second. As the staff got comments from residents, we communicated those comments to the applicants, and as those comments came in, they were adjusting the plans and trying to address some of the issues. That's where the sound wall came in,
Right.
additional buffering came in, they've moved
Everything back.
things, so that's what was happening.
So the changes in the plans were in their favor?
Yes.
Yeah, the little bit changes were in the public's
Yeah,
favor.
In the public's favor.
yeah, they're a direct reflection of the staff identifying some issues with the site plan in accordance with the zoning ordinance and addressing them.
Okay, good to hear.
Okay. We heard a reference here to the modification or moving of number 10T, and I had heard that before. What's not clear to me from what I've seen here is what is the relationship in size and area of the developed or developable area that's proposed to the present developed area. I'm not seeing an overlay. I'm not seeing anything that says, here is what is developed now, and here is what is proposed.
Sure.
That needs to be clear. I'm not seeing the clarity. That may be my fault, but I would like to see a clear differentiation or overlay of what's now and what's going to be in terms of the boundaries of the area.
Just give me just 2 seconds here, and I will pull up.
Nancy,
Let me,
Of existing, we'll do a comparison of the existing conditions versus the proposed.
All right. Yeah,
I
my
think we're
final
just
point.
a little too complicated here. So, sir,
Yes?
I'm not quite sure. Put the aerial up, Seth. The footprint of the facility as it exists today is not changing that much, except for zoom in on the clubhouse area. Zoom in. I can't zoom
As far
in.
as it can go.
Can you explain what's going on
Yeah,
there?
so this existing maintenance building in the middle of the parking lot is going away. The clubhouse itself is being expanded slightly. This maintenance building is also being removed and being replaced by the one shown here, with the parking lot being extended to accommodate extra parking spaces, the new maintenance building, the swimming pool, and the pickleball courts.
Back to the area.
Versus what's shown here. The new maintenance building is approximately where my laser pointer is now. Swimming pool, this location. Pickleball courts behind it.
So that's an area that's not currently developed.
It's part of hole number 10.
Right. Yeah. You see here, they're going to have to relocate the tee boxes. Those are right on top of the existing tee boxes.
So the expansion is occurring at the end of the parking lot.
Correct.
Toward number 10 tee box. That's the only area where the footprint's getting larger.
Clubhouse marginally, right.
But it's staying within the existing footprint. Are you with us, sir?
Yes. But, so there is an extension of the footprint to the southwest.
Correct.
Okay, because it was not at all clear what the old footprint was and what the new one was, what those changes, and what that expansion would happen to be. Okay? My final question, I read in the almanac, I believe it was the almanac of August 11, a statement regarding this this proposal, and in that it said quite specifically that possibility was left open for the development of homes in the area that is not part of this special exception.
That is the correct statement.
Yeah.
The golf course maintains a zoning of low-density residential with a conservation residential overlay on top of it. So it will, here and moving forward, have the potential for homes to be developed on it. It is zoned for residential development.
The statement made it sound a lot more likely than I'm hearing here tonight. Let me see if I can find it.
Who wrote the statement?
Yeah, I'm not,
We don't know about statements in the paper. Go ahead.
yeah,
It
please
wasn't,
do.
I don't believe it was your statement, sir, but go ahead.
So, clearly, as we looked at this opportunity, right, and being a resident, a community, advocate, we wanted to try to keep this golf course alive, right? And given it, the McCloskeys have done a fantastic job to date, and we wanted to pick it up where it left off. From an investment point of view, it doesn't make sense to go into this without having every single, I dotted and T crossed to what the potential is of this land, right? As you know, as well as all the residents know, the land in Peters Township has great value. My commitment coming in here and my commitment to the club and the investment we're making is representation of goodwill to the community to keep this as alive as long as it can. The only way that it can stay alive, right, is to make this club successful, and we're putting millions of dollars into it to try to do that, right? We wouldn't be doing that if we intended to shut down that golf course, right? But we absolutely need to succeed, and if we don't, we need other options of developing and everything else in order to get my business partners and such a return on their investment. But we have no intention in any foreseeable future right now to do so, right? We have a business plan to invest, and that business plan carries this out. If we succeed, I hope we can all golf and have a nice time at the club for many years, right? I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find that specific statement, but thank you.
Thank you.
I also heard somebody say it was going to be 9 holes. That's not true.
Anybody else from this side of the room? We can come back to you. Anybody in the middle would like to speak? If not, anybody from the right side, come on up. State your name and your address.
Sure. So Noah Stuczynski on 103 Cobblestone Circle. My house is the one that's probably closest to the clubhouse. So the back portion is pretty understandable. And if it's okay, I do have some questions for you folks up here on the board, but Sean, if I can hit you with a couple of questions too. So the couple of pieces that I had, and Seth, I know I talked to you a couple of times.
Yep.
That you had brought up where the original condition, I think, was at 11. And Ron, the reason that I told you about 4, because I was the one that asked Seth about it, but there was, in the conditions list where it was originally at 11. In the original state, like in the original...
I mean, you're referring to my original staff report to Planning Commission?
Correct. And that it was going to be open until 11 o'clock. And so that has been changed to 9 o'clock. You just skipped pretty quickly past it. Can you go?
My condition today to Planning Commission is 9 p.m. closing time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's 9 p.m. So
7 a.m., 9 p.m.
Okay.
You're talking like
Just the swimming pool.
For the outdoor components of this recreation facility.
Just the swimming pool.
Swimming pool.
How about pickleball?
I mean,
Yeah, the swimming pool.
I said in here it says swimming pool and pickleball.
Okay. So to go back. So now
Okay.
just
We don't. We like keep the background commentary down and focus. You got a lot of people talking behind you. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Okay. So a couple of the questions, just to give some lay of the land, I guess, is that as soon as 8 o'clock hits at that golf course, I mean, it's dead silent. Like, that's the reason that I purchased that house. There's only one floodlight, and it's behind the maintenance building to the left. Like, I don't see it. It's pitch black. It's one of the reasons that I was okay to move behind a golf course. And now I know that there's going to be lighting coming in, and you're not going to see that lighting from a person within the community as the lot. I'm not that smart, but I'm smart enough that I know, how don't you see light that's going to be present? Like, that doesn't make sense. You're not going to be able to block it out. When I'm sitting on my back patio, it's not going to be one light to the left. It's going to be a bunch of lights all over the place. So I guess that's one of my concerns. Another piece that Mr. Smith, you had just explained to me was that it's going to be open until 9, but that's only the pool and the pickleball. How late will you guys, I don't know if you'll know this, how late is the restaurant going to be open till?
Sean, if you don't mind, come up to the
I'll just stay up here.
I'll just stay there, yeah. Take up residence here.
Yeah, we actually didn't set specific hours at this point, but I would expect it to be what would be normal for a club, right? I don't know, what is reasonable, but I would definitely expect, I go out to dinner at 9:30 at night. So it can't close at 10 o'clock, right? So, I would be looking for what the market determines to be normal is what we would want to be allowable for the club.
I can appreciate that, but I'm going to have a restaurant and then a big parking lot. Again, there's going to be changes, and there's going to be way more lights that I don't want that. I don't think a lot of people would want that behind their house compared to what they moved in at just 2 years ago when I moved in. So that's a concern of mine. Like 9 o'clock, okay, I could see that, but there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to be happening that I'm concerned with because it directly affects me. Like I'm right there. And so that's going to make a big difference to where I'm at, and then also the general value of my house. Like, looking at that, I don't know a lot of people that want to move. That's going to be on the parking lot with these giant lights everywhere. So those are genuine concerns.
There's not giant lights. Where are you getting giant lights?
How high up will those?
And the lighting, we don't allow light to negatively impact your property. The light will be focused and won't be glaring on you. There'll be light to light the parking lot and focused on that. It won't be focused on your home.
But there is going to be
there won't
more
be glaring floodlights over toward you.
There's going to be a lot of lights, though, isn't there?
There'll be some lights, yes, but they won't be glaring onto your residential property. We don't allow that to happen.
It seems a little bit like semantics that I'm saying there's going to be lights, but I'm not going to see them. I don't know
You
if I
will
can
see them. They won't be glaring on you, though. They won't be shining in your windows, so to speak.
I'm going to agree to disagree then on this. That there's going to be lights.
We have a lot of lighting throughout Peters, and lighting is one of our least concerns. We can focus lighting on where it needs to be focused. We're more concerned with noise and that kind of thing.
I'm absolutely.
Don't worry about the lights.
Okay. I guess moving to the noise, I am concerned about the noise too. I have young kids. It goes dead silent early evening, and now it's going to be open, and it's going to be a restaurant. I would expect, Sean, that there would be booze there. I'm sure there will. People are going to be loud, having a good time. Why would there not? You wouldn't have a restaurant open anyways if there wasn't. It's going to be a lot louder, and then we're going to have weddings. I mean, I don't go to weddings unless they're closing up at, 10 or 11, and that's on the early side, and that's what's going to be pouring out into the parking lot. And I think that's a little bit of that's one other thing that I have a cause for concern with, that it's going to be that many people pouring out and being loud and being in my backyard. I mean, having even the soundproof wall or whatever, you're still going to hear it. I still hear a lot of guys coming off the golf course. I golf, I get it. Everybody's a little surly and uses some choice words. That's going to happen, but there's going to be more of that after weddings, after a restaurant, those kind of things. So the noise is a concern as well, just from a timing standpoint. I guess when that restaurant or when the venue would be open till, from a wedding standpoint too. Those are two pieces that I question, I guess. So that's another one that I want you to take under consideration, I guess, then.
Okay.
And then my last one, I went out there behind my house to see it, and Seth, if I could ask you one more question. The one with the trees that are being shown, you can give those. So I guess if there is the light, I have a lot of trees that are already there, and they're very mature. They're tall trees, 20, 30 feet in the air with everything. Sean, I'm going to hit you one more time here. Mm-hmm. Where's my fence? Because mine's the one that's solid and opaque through it. This is my house. So are you taking down my trees, or?
We don't intend to take anything down. We're going to put more up, right?
Okay.
That's our intention. We're going to keep, unless they're really nasty and dead, but our intention is to keep that whole buffer that's there, as Seth said. Our intention would be to add to it, not take away.
So those trees that would be there would remain?
Yeah, we're not.
If they're valuable, mature trees that aren't, like Sean said, sick or dying, then yeah, the intent is to maintain those, because you're not going to replace those anytime soon.
Right, and putting in that size of tree would take decades to get there.
Absolutely.
Because
we have no intention to take any mature, healthy tree down on that entire line.
Okay.
And one condition that we're going to be we're recommending be placed on the special exception approval is that they do a little more due diligence with this landscape buffer and get a landscape architect involved to really take a close look at this, make sure that they outline the existing buffer, what they're going to be planting in there, making sure there's the appropriate types of plants that can survive next to that existing buffer. And when we get that stamp and seal on it by a landscape architect, I think it gives us a lot more confidence here, staff.
So will those changes, because again, when we got the notice, you had sent that letter out that we received, the Friday before the one holiday weekend, and then we haven't met before then. there still seems to be a lot of changes that are going on, and it's next Tuesday or Wednesday, I think, that it goes to the voting meeting that this thing gets some legs and really moves along with everything. It feels a little rushed. Like I know that you folks didn't have a meeting in July, but it didn't give us the opportunity to talk and even understand this more changes to be made prior to. So that's one of the pieces. Yep.
You had a whole month plus to come meet with us, and nothing's being rushed.
Well, I have an exact response to that. When I spoke to Seth, he said, yes, come to the meeting. That's when we're going to be discussing this.
Well, of course, we have our public meetings, but you had a whole month to come visit us and give us your thoughts so that we can incorporate those thoughts and communicate those thoughts to the applicant so your issues can be addressed.
I was told to come to the meeting with any comments and concerns that I had.
Well,
And again, we're hearing it, so we
I appreciate
your comments.
that.
Trust me, the board here is listening.
I followed the letter, like, because I asked that specific question because stuff's happening. Sean, you on the spot. Got it. It's going to happen, but I'm a resident, so I got to understand that and pipe up where I can.
Yeah.
We're listening.
Yep. And then the
I am
last piece that I had, there's a waste sewage line that's going to cut through that goes to a kind of a spotty water, I don't know, retention, whatever you want to say, line already. That's going to be cutting like through my property. So is there, like, does that have to go through there? Is there an option to go like another way for it? Like, I don't know anybody that would
show that sanitary sewer?
Yeah, I'll bring up the sanitary sewer plan. Okay. Just a second. I apologize. It's giving me fits. Seen here on the right-hand side is the proposed sanitary sewer connection to the end of Cobblestone Court. There's an existing sanitary sewer easement. They'll be tying into the existing sanitary sewer line that exists in Cobblestone Court. The easement currently runs to the edge of the property. It's a sanitary sewer easement that facilitates sanitary sewer connection. As part of any connection to a sanitary sewer line running through an easement, I think they would be more than, they're going to restore that back to the existing conditions to the best of their abilities. The intention is to make it seem like you never had to disrupt that property. But that easement is there to facilitate that connection.
and that's the closest point.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just take it on that one?
Well, there's an easement there.
Yeah.
It's allowed to be there.
I'm looking for yes or no. I don't know, so
You
that's why
took
I'm
it when you
saying.
bought the properties.
Okay.
Yeah, that easement was there when you purchased your property. It was there when the subdivision, just like the one that goes right through my backyard, and I live right over the hill from this property. We take it when we bought our properties.
Okay. And so what does that look like? And when you say you restore it, because there's a small tree line that runs through there separating my residence versus the Loadmans who are on the other side of that. Like, does that get put back to normal? Like, how long am I going to have? Nobody wants an open sewer line construction next to their house. Okay, Mr. Smith, I understand. It is what it is, but like that kind of stinks, to be honest. Intended here. Like, to have that open, and how long is that going to be there? Like, construction, again, there's always exceptions and there's always extensions that I'm going to have to be dealing with that nobody else is going to deal with except us and the Loadmans. That is a bit of a concern as well that I have.
I think that concern will be a discussion you'll be having later down the road. What we want to do is stage remains what we're discussing tonight, and that's probably more the first and second things that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
This probably is a later discussion point.
Okay. Those are my points that I have.
Okay.
I appreciate you letting me hear me out.
Sure. Anybody else on this side of the room would like to come up and say anything? Okay, please do. Sure.
My name's Devin Orsi. I'm at 302 Bridle Trail. Conceptually, I think that this is incredible. Okay, so I'm going to have a little back and forth of it. I am a general contractor. I'm an entrepreneur like Sean. I am a restaurant owner as well. And I can tell you, I have a business in Canonsburg, PA, and it took me 2.5 years to get a noise ordinance motion in our favor. One of the issues was the residents around me. So I'm kind of on both sides of the fence, and I understand it dramatically. What I can tell you is what I deal with currently on that fence line is a lot of trash, kind of me throwing pop cans and beer cans and a lot of different debris back over the 8-foot offset line. I feel that the setback will hurt Sean if it's pushed further out, and I understand why it's going to take away a lot of the parking places. But I do feel that it's very close to the fence line as it is already. And my concern is what I deal with, again, on a daily basis. I have 2 little children. All the cars are parked there. I have the black see-through fence, and the noise factor. It is pretty extreme. I'm going to be honest with you. The dumpster on Thursdays, I believe, that smashes, right next to the fence line. We all hear it, our neighbors and so forth like that. But I'm not here to basically go against something that is promising for Peters Township. It's incredible in one respect, and I think it's wonderful. But I do think there are some reservations from mainly the neighbors that are boarded up against this now. I think the noise containment from a general contracting standpoint, we do a lot of buildings. I do a lot of commercial stuff. I do a lot of residential. I can tell you that the noise is going to be there. I can tell you that the setback should probably meet around 20 to 25 feet from the fence line, or we're definitely going to have some issues. I feel that although I don't want to see a fence on Sean's side, I think that may be something that you may want to look into to sort of buffer that noise beyond just the trees and the things that are there. In talking about the trees, if you know where my property is, you'll see that mine are all gone because they're dying. A lot of those trees are dying. There's a friend here, Pat, who owns Arbor Tree Service. He understands a lot about trees. He's a neighbor as well. I had to cut those down on my own. One just fell and broke my fence, and the golf course didn't do much to contact me when I contacted them about two or three times. We tend to battle a little bit, but we try to make good neighbors. So I built a nice little log fort there to make it known that I'm tired of this stuff coming over. But like I said, I think that as a community, I think we can all try to get a better hold on this, but I really need you guys to hear us out as far as the 7 or 8 properties that will be directly affected by this. Noise is my biggest one. I think the parking is going to be a challenge for Sean. I understand the need that he's definitely going to need more parking spots. In my business in Canonsburg, we got a special exception too. I have to actually put my patrons at the church because I have no parking. I can't buy anything else. I'm landlocked. So I get it. But we're growing. There's a lot of growth here. I think that we just need to balance some things out, tweak a little bit on what's happening. I'm not against conceptually what's going to transpire, but from a restaurant standpoint, what I worry about is the time that people do come out of the restaurant. No matter what I do in my restaurant, I'm very connected with the local law enforcement there. We work together. We're probably one of the only non-nuisance places down in Canonsburg. Some are a little different than we are, but it's a growing thing. But I can tell you, no matter what I do, no matter what I put in place, someone will come out at 12 o'clock and they will scream. They'll be drunk. You'll hear bottles being thrown. I'm not saying that having a private club at this point is going to solve that, but I'm not seeing public in this at all. I think that this is somewhat event-driven, and I can understand why. I think it should be to a degree. But 250 people for a wedding. My wedding's September 4th. I'm having it in Deep Creek. I rented 2 big houses, and guess what? I'm already getting pushed back from the local neighbors because we're out on the water. So I get every aspect of this, both sides of the fence. I'm not saying it's again, great idea. I love it. I would be a member. There's no doubt about it. But I think we need to have some controllables that maybe haven't come out yet, that are going to come out before Tuesday. The only other things that I have is obviously home values. I think will have a little bit of it'll affect us in some way. If you're a golfer, you're going to buy the property. If you're not a golfer, well, you're not buying the property. So it's just the way it is in terms of that. I am worried about the trees. I think that that's something we really need to talk about. I do think we need a lot more trees, a lot more thought into that buffer zone to really stop the noise. The lighting is another thing that no matter what you do, again, I do it every day. That lighting, whether dispersed downward, whether it's directional or not, you're going to see a field in a cloud of light. Now, it's there. It's like staring at the moon, right? We can't get rid of the moon, but there's ways that maybe we can turn off the lights once it reaches a certain time of night. They all go, everything gets shut off once everyone's out. That's something I would think about. Back to the parking, though, and the valet aspects. Employees. Are you giving employees X amount of spaces, and how many employees do you anticipate having for those spaces?
It was in our notes, but I don't know it off the top of my
Okay,
head.
because I had to go through this with my own ordeal with my restaurant, and I had to have a certain number of parking spots, and I don't want that to affect your ability to have 45 more,
but
50 more. So,
but yeah.
And water retention. What are we going to do about the water that currently curbs at the fence line about 12 foot in that seeps into that little berm and comes into the yards? Because we're getting all of that. So what are we going to do once we start digging and landscaping, and where's the water going to go? Where are we going to redirect that?
Where it's supposed to go now, probably. I don't know. It's likely to be the answer. It's going to that far corner.
It's going towards your pool, though.
No, it's going towards what will be the number 10 green or tee box.
Okay.
But there's a big collector right there.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's about all I have. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else from this side of the room like to come up?
I'm not speaking? Okay, I'm not gonna want to hear this. Can you zoom in on this?
Can you please come to the podium and introduce yourself?
Introduce yourself.
Well, I need to point to it very close. Can you zoom in on that a little bit?
What's your name?
My name is Patrick Tolan. I live at 308 Bridle Trail. If you guys golf at Scenic Valley, I'm right there at the 10th tee box. I'm sure you have. I have concerns about a councilman with being an investment on this property also. So can we zoom in there? I'll point out my house to you.
This is the best I can do right now.
No, okay. That's the best you can zoom in on?
I believe your property is this one right here.
Right here at the swing. Well, he can zoom in. I was at the council meeting on Tuesday, and he zoomed it in pretty close.
You can switch to our aerial. While we're doing that, do you have any comments?
Yeah, okay, well, I want to specify what my concerns are. Can you zoom in?
We're working on it.
Okay. This is a planning commission. This is like not a zoning, but it's planning for the future. What is being asked is, this is being asked to go from recreational to a commercial use. It's different. It's not recreation and commercial. The plans are to build a restaurant and a private club. Let me know when you can zoom in. I'd like to get a closer look. The idea for Sean, and I'm asking Sean, what's your other partner's name? Can I ask?
I have multiple partners.
Okay. There's a few other. You don't want to specify?
You don't need.
Okay.
You don't need.
Okay. I'm just.
I mean,
okay.
tell me why it's relevant. I don't.
Well, they're asking.
Here,
You're asking to rezone this from recreational to commercial. It's a restaurant. Hold on. Just hear me out.
It's not a rezoning.
Okay. They're subdividing this for a plan, and this is a planning commission. The plan is they're subdividing this to put a restaurant and a private swimming pool, private swim club. Is there anything I said not the truth? Down the road, the plans are, because there's no money in golf courses, it's going to be developing the homes. The restaurant and the private swim club is going to stay. He needs the pool, the pickleball court to keep it a recreational area. The restaurant might be public, but the pool is going to be a private pool. There's homes that are going to be built. That is the plan.
Excuse me, sir, I believe in Seth, you're correct.
Okay.
This has to remain private,
Yes.
correct?
There's
no way anybody could enter that restaurant unless they're a member.
This is a special exception use.
Okay, so the restaurant's going to be a private restaurant.
Correct.
Okay, okay. Can I walk up to the board here? Okay, now this is my house right here. This is my pool here. What's proposed, you don't have to switch back, this pool is going to be 25 feet from right here, sitting right here, 25 feet down, 30 feet from this point down, it's 30-foot drop. I had Owen out there the other day, and we stood there on the wall, and I looked at the topographic map. I'm pretty good at this kind of stuff, and that pool's going to be from this edge down 30 to 35 feet is where the pool is going to be, and it's situated right here. Pickleball court, tee boxes over here is what they're proposing. There's no way, and I don't know, you can think, we put up an 8-foot fence, that doesn't do anything. I invite you guys to go to my house, stand in my backyard, 308, and I'll measure out 25 feet off. I'll ask Steve if I can stand on that box, and you're going to see where that pool is. It's 35 feet down. Unless you put a 40-foot wall up, which I'm not going to go for. There's no 40-foot wall going to be out my backyard. I bought this property for the view. I understand, it's moving along here. But that's my house right here with my pool, and this is where the clubhouse is going to be with the pool right here. There's no way 60 decibels, 25 feet, I can stand at that door to there, and all you have to say is, Mom, I fell in the pool. That's over the limit. So that means every time that meter goes off at my house, the police are going to be called, and what's going to happen? What's the resolve of that? What's the resolve of yelling at night, at midnight when the wedding's let out? This is a planning commission, so you have to plan for what could happen and what will happen. I go to weddings, I tie one on. I know what goes on. It was told by him to a councilman that spoke on Tuesday that you can go back through the video. I taped it. He was sitting over here. He said, this isn't going to, the golf course isn't going to last more than 4 years. The councilman was sitting right there. He said he spoke to the developer, and he reassured him. He goes, it's going to be developing the houses. So either somebody's lying or I know you're going to, as soon as we walk out of here, you're going to call the guy and say, hey, you know what the heck here? But it's on tape. It's recorded. So his plans are, which I understand you want to make money. I'm all for that. But I live right there. There's no way that lighting is going to be able to be blocked with the site plan with the lights and everything not shining into my backyard. What's the definition of a private club? I'm asking the planning commission.
But you should ask the staff.
Okay, what's the definition?
This is not a private club. This is a private recreation facility. Those are two separate use type of properties.
Okay, give me a definition of a recreational facility, please.
We don't have the definition in my report, but I'll pull it up.
What goes on in a recreational facility?
Well, you're looking for that.
Combination of
Hold on, Tim.
recreational
You should
use.
look for that definition.
Okay. You understand? You understand?
Hold on for a second, wait a minute. I'm this meeting. I gotta say something. Relax.
Well, this is thrown at us.
Just listen,
well, I'm
please.
upset about it, and I'm going to...
For one thing, just a minute here.
I know.
We're volunteers.
I know.
We're part of the community. We listen to
I know.
plans that come forward.
Okay.
We're not professional. Well, some of us are professionals in different areas
I know.
of planning. But, I need you just to calm
Okay.
down and
I'd like to
ask your questions.
Okay.
Give the staff a chance to answer. Okay, go ahead and proceed.
Okay, the zoning on this is going backwards. It's going not more so residential or residential friendly. It's going backwards to more commercial. You're putting a restaurant, a private restaurant, and a private pool in a residential area. Right now, there's a golf course. Okay, there's not a private restaurant there now. Okay, and you can color it however you want. A wedding doesn't it lets out at midnight. There's going to be noise and 60 decibel level. The police force you have to understand this is going to cost the community a lot in police. That being said, and I expressed this to Owen, and I texted him, and I asked him, get a hold of me, let's discuss this before the meeting, nothing. So here I am, I want to know exactly what the definition of a private recreational facility is, because that's a very vague, something can, 5 years down the road, it could be changed into something else.
So it's on the screen now. I'll read it for those that might not be able to read it. It's a subset of the definition of recreational facility, private, an enterprise operated by an individual or nonprofit association or corporation other than a public entity for the pursuit of sports and recreational activities which may be advertised to the general public, but the use of which is limited to members and their guests, including, but not limited to, such establishments as country clubs, golf courses, sportsman clubs, golf practice facilities, playing fields, tennis or racket clubs, swimming pools, and similar facilities.
Okay.
That's what they're proposing.
Okay, you proposed that the pool's going to be closed at 9, or the light's going to be off at 9.
That's one of the conditions, I think, that was put in your report, correct, Seth?
Okay, so the lights are going to, what happens when the lights aren't off at 9?
That's a condition that we recommend to the zoning hearing board.
I understand. I mean, you guys are the planning guys.
Whether that gets adjusted or ignored or put on, that's just a condition that we put with,
I'm asking the question of what if they're not off?
Then we deal with it with the developer. We go to the developer and say, the lights aren't being turned off at 9 o'clock. We need to make sure this is done. If it's not done, well, it can be a violation of their site plan. I'm asking. So the facility gets built, golf course gets sold off homes. They throw a wedding. People are standing out around the pool. The pool's not being used, but they're using it as entertainment. 25 feet from my property line. That's the length of this room. That's the length of this room. I'm going to be standing on a wall 30 feet looking down at 25 feet. I'll be up there looking down at the corner of that room. And I'm talking like this at midnight when the wedding's letting out and they're all standing, maybe the pool's not being used, but they're going to use that facility on the outside. There's no way 60 decibels is not going to come into my backyard. I invite everybody here to walk into my backyard. I got cameras. Nobody's going to bother anything. 308 Bridal Trail, walk up to the fire pit and stand there, right there, and look down and look where the pool is going to be. There's no way around it. And I asked to convey this, I said to Owen when he was there that day, get a hold of the developers. I threw some names out, get a hold of me. Let's see if we can discuss it. They've moved some things we can't. Engineering fees are set in way. Well, I have to do what I have to do with my attorney. And I'm not threatening, but I'm going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in my home. It's worth $800,000-900,000. I paint it, I fix it up. And nobody's going to walk into that backyard. And like somebody told me back here, we're going to have to sell the house in the fall after the pool closes or in the spring before they open. Nobody's going to come walking in here. They're going to look at that and say, what the hell is that? And putting that fence up does not help anything. An 8-foot fence, there's a 5-foot fence now down there that golfers jump over and walk up into my backyard, into my kitchen, and mix up a drink and go back over and tee off. Okay? So I know it's there. The lighting there around that pole. I understand the lighting facing away from my house, but there's lighting on the other side. It's going to be shining right into my backyard. You'd have to put up a 45-foot wall, and I'm not going to have I'm not going to look at my backyard next to an interstate and see a wall built right there. That isn't the reason I bought the house. I want to show you guys a picture of my house, an aerial view. He said the pool's going to close at 10. What time are weddings going to be over? I can't understand the people that live closer to that area because it'll be midnight. You know what it's like even on a Friday at 10 o'clock at night with the golfers that are there now yelling and screaming. I don't get that. I'm further down. I'm by the thing. Yeah, if you can just leave that right there, please. So the topographic of it is no trees, no fence is going to hide. This is my wall of my house right here. Built all around. Here's my fire pit. Here's my pole. Here's the flag. There's no way anything can be built on this property line, and that pole is going to be right there. It's going to be out in this area. There's no way the sound, and I'm telling you right now, I'm going to enforce that if something isn't moved and changed. I asked Owen
can't be done. Well, then we're going to have to do what I'm going to have to do. 60 decibel level. I have a meter. I should have brought it. I was running, I came in late. I could stand right there with it, and you can talk to me, and it'll go over. Hey, that's over the limit. Mom, I fell on a pole. That's over the limit. And it's going to be enforced unless you guys grant a variance for higher decibel levels. The police, and I'm not gonna lose hundreds of thousands of dollars for somebody else to make money. I understand. They should have came to us and said, hey, this is what we need. I was deaf ears. I got the text message. I sent Owen. I said, get a hold of me. Let me know what's going on. Nothing. And I was adamant that day he was in my backyard. Stood there. It's on my surveillance cameras. We're standing there talking. Everything was discussed. So I'm not going to allow it. I will do what I have to. Then I was told, well, and you take it for however it wasn't. I took it for how it was. If you don't go along with these plans, we're going to build houses there. Well, I really don't want houses, but I'd rather have houses built there than a commercial pool in my backyard. I will, if you guys, and I'm asking this ahead of time, I would like to know what your recommendation is before Tuesday to the zoning, if that's possible.
You'll know it tonight.
Okay, well, okay, that's what I needed to know. The lighting, there's no way of hiding it coming into my backyard unless they put everything facing the opposite way. There's no way. And there's no way people are going to swim in that pool without the decibel level coming over 60. It's impossible. So you can't say, well, no, you can't. You can't plant 40-foot trees to hide the sound level. It's physically impossible. And they knew this, or they wouldn't have sent a representative to me. Hey, blah, blah, blah. Well, I gave Owen some suggestions. We're not changing the site plan. I know about topographic and about earth moving and about it costs money to move earth. And I suggested a few ideas to him. We can't do it because can you pull up the topographic map on this real quick? Let me just bounce an idea off of Sean here. No, do the other one with the actual site plan. This one. This one right here.
2 seconds, please.
Okay. Can you close in a little bit?
In or out?
And to make for the whole site here, you go. Yep. Okay. These are, I forget what Owen told me to think. Here's my backyard here. Right here. Here's my pool in this area right here. It steps down into here. This is all steep grading in here.
Let's pause for a second.
Earth.
Time out. Just pause for a second. I'm not getting anything, Ed.
Yeah,
It's a flood warning. Okay.
Flood warning.
All right. Okay, we're good.
This is a steep embankment because of all the additional excavating they do. The earth moves up. This is all level. This is level. People, you guys golf there, you're in the parking lot. You see it's level. They're trying to avoid, if you can bring it down. Okay, keep going. Okay. A little bit more. You'll see, okay, here's the pavilion where they have picnics and everything. There, you can see the steep gradient here. And you can go back to Owen and I explained to him what I suggested. Can't do it. Engineering plans are already done. We're not going back through. Take this or we're going to build houses. It's what I was told. There ain't nothing lying about that, no deception. Mr. Tolan, this is what we're going to do. Otherwise, we're going to build houses. You're going to look at houses. I'd rather see houses than this commercial pool in my backyard. And when it does, if it happens to go through, you guys are responsible for the sound of it. You sound it every time the police are called. They're not going to come.
Ed, how do we address that?
How do we address noise violation?
Yeah.
I mean,
Sir, I think you should listen to what they're going to do.
Go ahead.
you know, we have clear ordinances in the township. We have noise ordinances. If we get complaints, you know, we go out with the sound meter. We measure the existing residual background noise. We measure any potential noise violations to determine if they are in fact a violation of the noise ordinance. If that happens to be the case, we move through our zoning ordinance enforcement process by issuing a letter to the property owner identifying the problem at hand. We attempt to work on a resolution. If it continues to exist, we potentially move into the citation process. There is a process to deal with noise ordinance violations.
And secondly, sir, part of that process may be that you can't have weddings. You can't do this. You can't shut down. So what I'm trying to say, if you listen instead of just yelling at these gentlemen, there's a process through it they can go through that will adequately protect the interest of yourself if there is a decimal level violation. It's not like you're going to have to call the police every time. You call it once, they hear you, we go through the process, and they address it.
Okay, the weddings aside, that's all the other residents further on down from me in the parking lot. They're going to have to deal with that more. I'm talking about the pool.
Well, we have the same with that noise ordinance.
I invite people into my pool, and I cannot control little kids from screaming and yelling. Saying he's not going to be able to enforce the sound. There's no, unless he's God, there's no way enforcing it. And I understand his plan is to build this private club. He's not going to make any money at the golf course. Come on. I mean, Steve McCloskey wouldn't be selling this if he was making money at it. And he's doing it at the bare minimum. It's in it for money. I don't blame him. It's the almighty dollar. But I'm telling you right now, that golf course those homes are going to be built there. Then there's going to be a restaurant, a private restaurant and pool area in there. That's the plan. The councilman that was sitting here the other night said, I heard it firsthand, within 4 years it's going to be developed. So this is a planning commission. These are the questions that should be, you know, and that's what's going to happen. And I understand, but something has to happen with that pole. It has to be turned, moved, and I'm putting it on record. It's being taped, just like the councilman meeting. I have it. And I didn't buy this. I bought this house without seeing the inside of it off of Janet and the Thief. I walked to the back door. This is a true story. You can call her. West. I always said I wanted to buy a house that sat up on a hill with the sun setting into the backyard. She called me in a rainstorm, went in West. I wasn't to my warehouse in South Park. Called her, bought the house. I never was in the house till I did the walkthrough the day before the closing. I just bought it for the view 17 years ago. So my value in my house with this pool is nobody's going to want to. I don't want to move next to a steel mill. I don't want to move next to a pool with kids screaming. And there's no way that you're going to tell me that that's not going to happen. It's going to happen. So we're going to have an issue down the road with attorneys, with the police, with zoning. And the township, and I've been through this with South Park. I went to the state superior court with them. They spent over $500,000 in attorney fees with Paul Gitnick over industrial property that I owned. They fought me, and they lost. They spent $480,000 in attorney fees in South Park. It was all over. I built a warehouse on an industrial property, and Gateway gave me it. So there's no way that this sound is not going to be there. There's no way the lighting is not going to affect my backyard. There's none. Now, from here on over, from me going up the other way, there's trees. My next door neighbor, Ken and Tammy, they're moving. They don't care. They want to get the house gone before thing. But next to Devin, on down the road, it looks up. They can't see the parking lot. From my backyard, and I invite everybody here, I have no issues walking into my backyard. 308 Bridle Trail. I suggest the zoning and planning commission show up in my backyard and I'll stand there with a string. Steve McCloskey, if I can walk on his 10th tee off, and we'll string out where the pool's going to be, and there's no way that sound is not going to buffer up into my backyard. Period. It's definitely what it is. So I'm upset about it. That's not going to happen. Okay.
We understand, sir. We understand.
So it's 30 foot down. The vents are going to be late at night. You have to plan. This is a planning commission. You know what a wedding is. Come on. And I understand what his theory is. South Hills Country Club is 3 years booked for weddings. There's a lot of money in that. It's a great idea. I wish I was an investor.
Yeah, you're repeating yourself. A lot of these issues are still repeating, so anything new that you'd like to let us know about.
I don't want to look out my backyard and walk out and look down and see an 8-foot solid fence that does nothing. It's like looking down in the valley. A fence along here. You can bring this up. Fence along here does absolutely nothing. 10-foot trees does absolutely nothing. I suggested to Owen what should be done. We can't do it. Well, something has to be done. And I have some suggestions. He wants to get a hold of my attorney, talk about it. That's fine. But I have to make this legit. My attorney said, go speak, make your points. He wanted to come. I didn't want to spend $500, but on Tuesday I will. I suggested that they move this. And the topographic up here, I spoke to Owen. I know about excavating. I work with Franjo Construction. I work with these guys. So I know what it costs to move earth. I know what the cost is. Less here, a little bit more there, but it gets the project done. And there's ways to change it and make everybody happy.
All right, sir.
Let me just make sure I got everything.
I'm sorry. I understand that we have to have comments from other folks as well.
I understand.
And
Well, there's nobody else, I don't think.
I'm having a family emergency right here, so I'd like to leave as soon as we possibly can.
Hey, Aaron, if you need to go.
And do we have a
We have a quorum without you.
Okay. Well, then I'll
Ones are
queued.
We still have a quorum. Okay.
All right, Jim, come on up.
My name's Jim Platts. I live at 310 Bridle Trail. Like everyone else, I wish the pool would be moved. And it's hard to find 45 parking spaces, so I don't know from your drawings how you find another spot for the pool. So Patrick had an idea. Maybe you'll take a look at it and see if there's some merit to it. The only other questions I have, it sounds like you've addressed most of my concerns, which were 9 p.m. for lighting and around the pool area, as well as sound, music, and other issues. I would like to ask, the process talked about sound violations if the sound is higher, and you're taking measures with sound walls and other issues, which sound prudent, but I'm not an expert in sound design, so I don't know. And so my question is, the process is if the sound still is too loud, then we would contact the zoning department, planning at the township, and tell them, say, here's what's happening, and then you would issue letters and citations. Is there a point where it gets resolved that another piece of action is that you then commission a sound study to look at this through an engineering firm?
I mean, that certainly could be an option.
And is there any point where, if it doesn't get resolved, that you can close the pool?
It would certainly be a potential scenario.
That's obviously the last thing we would want to do, is have to close down a portion of it. But if it continues to be a problem in perpetuity, then
Do we have a certain decimal level already set forth?
Correct.
10 dBA above the residual background is the threshold.
And that would be for extraordinary measures, non-compliance, and not trying to make adjustments.
Continually.
So I'm just trying to see if there's any recourse on this.
But if this project moves forward, we want to try to head those kinds of situations off, and that's why we have potential noise attenuation walls and the buffer and
the professionals. I mean, that was added too, and it makes sense. I mean, well, I'm not a professional in sound either, so we'll get the right people in to at least try to head it off.
Okay. And you've been very good. I brought some concerns to you early on and continually, so I appreciate you listening to the residents and to myself in particular. So that's really all my comments for tonight. Do I want a pool in my backyard, 175 feet? Commercial pool? No. And I think we could poll the room and no one would want that. Am I concerned about the sound and it's going to be unreasonable? People tell me that we're making a lot of engineering moves to avoid that. I'm hoping they work. So, and then just to make sure I understand, We're still, it's 9 p.m. is the shut-off time for the pool area, lighting, and the sound for that area.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you.
Excuse me, I meant to just show you guys real quick. And I'm done.
Dave, I'm done. I can't listen to him.
No, sit back down.
We're done.
Or we'll have to ask you to leave the room. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Go, come on up.
So, Chris Labby, 312 Bridle Trail. I get all the golf balls off the tee box. So if you need any golf balls, I got tons.
So we're moving over.
And so I support the golf course. I'd rather see that than homes. So I wish you the best of luck at that. And I understand Mr. Tolan's concern about the pool and the noise. And that's really what my concern is the noise and things that can be done. I don't know. I heard fence. I don't know. And then I thought I heard walls. So I got to believe in today's world, you know, you drive by the highway and you see these sound walls. I mean, and I know it's money and you're trying to do the right thing, but I just encourage you to try to look for a good solution to, you know, I got to believe there's some cool stuff out there to try to abate the noise. And I like the idea of maybe, you know, revisiting it, you know, after some runtime if it's problematic. Because, you know, I think we all want to be good neighbors and, you know, see where it goes. But my main, you know, so I support it. And I'm concerned about the noise.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just a question for the zoning hearing board. Are people allowed to come and do they take
I mean, it
comments
is a
at
much more formal
It's more of a
process. I mean,
quasi.
it is a quasi judicial proceeding.
Yeah.
I mean, they are sworn in to provide testimony. You know, they affirm that everything they say is the truth and nothing but the truth. The zoning hearing board needs to take testimony into consideration whether or not they're presenting actual evidence or just speculative conjecture. You know, this is obviously a very open conversation, a lot of back and forth dialogue, but the zoning hearing board is a much more formal process.
Gotcha. It's like you're in court.
Gotcha.
There's a stenographer.
Yeah, we
you're
will-
sworn in,
Right.
and you're
We'll have
under oath.
We're going to have our zoning hearing board solicitor present at the hearing to help us facilitate the hearing, just to make sure that we're doing everything in accordance with the municipality's planning code and the process set forth.
And to again answer the first gentleman's questions, you're going to post whatever we have here.
Yeah, I
and all
will,
the
as soon as I get this
conditions that go
decision,
along with it.
right, yeah, as soon as this decision's prepared and ready to go, I'll put it in the same Dropbox folder.
And they can still ask you questions, call it tomorrow. I'm not trying to pass the buck here, but I do want to move along. I want to keep this line
Tomorrow,
moving.
Monday, Tuesday morning, yeah.
Okay. So, any other questions you may have? You know, if you read Seth's letter, you're welcome to follow up with them. Again, we're a volunteer organization, and we try to make conditions to help this process move along in the best, best event that we can with the community in mind. Sean, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. I'm going to move on. Make it brief. Very brief.
Very briefly, Ron Schaffner, 314 Bridle Trail. I found the two brief quotes from the Almanac.
Well, okay, the almanac, that's a paper. We have nothing to do with that. I mean, you can say them, but I don't think that's going to have any bearing on our decision tonight. That's just from an editor.
Okay, these are quotes from Township Manager Paul Lauer. Okay? First quote, what they intend to do is subdivide that property, take out the area where the clubhouse is now and make it a separate parcel, and to create a recreation facility there. That implies that it's the same area, not an expansion. Okay, so that was definitely...
I think what Mr. Lauer is trying to explain there is that this is to become a separate parcel of land. Certain elements of the site are going to go away, but they're going to be improved. He certainly wasn't trying to say that everything's maintaining the existing footprint. I mean, Mr. Lauer understands that the parking lot's being expanded and there's a new maintenance building.
Well, he says the area where the clubhouse is now. So
Right,
that
the
is- that's
existing
what-
clubhouse.
Right. The other quote is this, again, from Mr. Lauer, okay? When this gets subdivided off, the intention is to continue to have a golf course there, but what you should fully expect is that it will be developed as housing at some point in time, so this recreation facility that sits in the middle of it will be surrounded by homes.
I think you need to take that up with Mr. Lauer.
He told it, but this is a concern that comes to the community. It doesn't say may be surrounded by homes. He said will be surrounded by homes.
Again, Mr. Lauer's not here. We're, again, the Planning Commission. We're charged with what we've been given tonight.
Did you hear what the applicant told us here live?
Yeah.
What did he say? What did he say?
He said they're going to try to make it run as a golf course.
That's his intention. That's all you need to know.
Okay, thank you very much. And now, commission members, do you have any more questions or comments for staff? Mr. Crehan?
I mean, do we want to talk about this condition 6B, 45 spaces for the parking? I think, sitting here, I think it would be appropriate if we, per this parking study that we do June through August after construction's done, we identify that there is a parking deficiency. I think we can maybe leave it open to the, the acceptance of the township and their consulting traffic engineer that the developer develop an alternative parking scenario to resolve any potential parking issues. Whether that takes the form of additional parking spaces, through a revised site plan, through an increase in valet parking for a threshold under 250 people. I mean, I think we can get a little bit more creative than setting aside 45 parking spaces.
Correct. If we could just reword that slightly to give them some flexibility.
And I guess what I'm telling you is that I think we're going to do that as staff to the zoning hearing board. Planning Commission, your recommendation can be totally separate from us, and you can maintain that 45 space change. But I think
I would rather take that B out.
Right.
Okay.
Let's make it flexible enough that there's not a specific solution that we see
Right,
that
that
give
we're
them the
identifying. Right.
Yeah.
So do we want to? Are you considering removing 6B entirely, or do you want to rephrase it?
Just we can rephrase it here by saying, if keep it the same as you have it, but give the developer the opportunity to address the parking issue by multiple ways. He could valet, he could come up with some other
Shuttles.
Other areas. We don't have to set aside 45 spaces where there's not room to put them. We could reword that.
It's very ambiguous. I mean, where, so.
Give me just a second.
But you guys can make your recommendation.
What do you guys think about B? You have it in front of you?
Yeah.
I'm not sure B was well thought out at first, because I agree with the developer. I don't think it's feasible.
Well, I think
Just the way it stands. But you need to create an alternative to provide parking for additional 45. So whether it's valet, whether it's shuttle, whatnot. Because I think the number, I clearly think that 153 is not the right number.
But
I think we're even having it here from a traffic expert. It's not the right number in today's day and age. But, so we need to address it, but we need to address it in a realistic way. Where's he going to put another 45 spaces on the property? It's not going to happen. So.
This is just what
the onus is on him to figure that out.
Yeah, I kind of sketched, if the parking study identifies a parking deficiency on the site, the developers, to the satisfaction of the township and their consulting traffic engineer, develop an alternative parking scenario to accommodate. In parentheses, extra spaces, shuttle, increased valet service, etc.
Okay.
Something to that effect.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It provides for creative solutions, multiple.
Gives them the opportunity to develop their own solution rather than pigeonholing them into a cookie cutter fixer.
Yeah. Fine with that.
Good.
And I think number 7 about the sound is well written. I think that condition says it all in as few words as possible. I mean, it covers everything.
Just real quickly for the audience, that staff's recommending that the Planning Commission recommend to the Zoning Hearing Board that the special exception be approved, and we have 12 conditions now?
1, 2, 12, plus there's really 3 within the traffic, so it's 14 conditions total.
Yeah, and just real quickly, you could run through them real quick.
Can you put them up on the board? Yeah, I'm working. Give me just 1 second.
And that's a good menu for, a typical development. So it isn't that we're not trying. It's
pretty typical for what we see. The first one being Planning Commission revised site plan approval. I mean, that's just the continuation of this process. There's no getting around that. We're saying as staff that should the zoning hearing board determine that 10-foot setback from the adjacent property line allowed to be maintained as an existing non-conforming, that the developer, with the assistance of a landscape architect, through a signed and sealed landscape plan, develop a buffer that as closely replicates a type A buffer as possible between that parking lot and those adjacent properties. I mean, obviously that would take into consideration the existing buffer, what's there now, if it's living, if it's in good shape, try to maintain as much of that mature buffer as we can. And we would make that into somewhat of an open-ended process through maybe a little bit of back and forth dialogue and ultimately leading it up to our planning director's approval. Number 3 would be that this type A buffer between the swimming pool and the adjacent residential properties, as shown in the landscape plan, again prepared by this landscape architect, shall include a sound attenuation wall at a height style, again, to be approved by the planning director. That gives us some flexibility in wall height. Again, just we don't currently know, without getting a landscape architect involved, what that final height needs to be, but that gives us some staff level approval on that. Again, number 4, under the consultation of a landscape architect, the applicant shall be required to attempt to replant in an attempt to reestablish the type A buffer between the existing homes and the parking lot. If they fail to die or they just don't serve as an adequate buffer, they would go in and supplant that existing buffer in those locations that we're currently trying to preserve. The operation hours of the swimming pool and the pickleball areas, as we've discussed here this evening, shall be limited the hours of 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The supplemental regulations for this use type say 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. However, it also says that the zoning hearing board has the authority to place additional hours restrictions. That was staff's consideration of the potential noise concerns, was limiting that to that 9 p.m. These are the 3 conditions, and I'll modify condition B here as we're talking from our consulting traffic engineer, that they do this traffic study in the summer, June through August, of the facility after it's fully open for a full year, just to get a good, accurate count of their true peak parking demand. Condition B, as I just said, if the parking study determines that there is a parking deficiency on the site, the developer, to the satisfaction of both the township and the traffic engineer, shall develop an alternative parking scenario to resolve the issue, i.e., or for example, extra spaces, shuttle, increased valet, etc. And then, as we discussed, regardless, they'll provide valet service for any events of 250 or greater people. If these proposed buffers and sound walls do not sufficiently mitigate the sound from the proposed use, then further sound attenuation devices or methods shall be implemented. That's referring back to our noise violation process and how we address ongoing potential noise concerns. In terms of on-site lighting, no direct or sky-reflected glare shall be visible from adjoining public streets or adjacent lots when viewed from a person standing at ground level. This is, again, back to Ed. Those need to be focused down lights, not glaring or focused directly on those residential properties. The building materials for the proposed clubhouse and the adjacent, or the maintenance, fitness, and concession building at the other end of the parking lot shall be limited to brick, stone, or cement board siding with a shingled pitched roof. The site plan shall comply with all zoning ordinance requirements. Again, kind of forcing that zoning hearing board to make that decision about the parking lot. And then, to the satisfaction of the township consulting traffic engineer, they shall be required to provide the P&P car trip generation rates for the proposed development to determine whether or not we need to implement a traffic study.
Yeah, the additional one I added.
We have conditions.
The buffer.
The buffer
to
along the
continue.
Yep.
Buffer up.
A buffer. Additional landscaping be planted along the 2 residential properties.
I believe it's Logan and Naren properties.
Would word it along the entry drive.
Yeah, right. And I think when I final type that up, I'll put in the addresses for those 2 lots as well.
Good.
But what I think we want to hesitate to do is establish a buffer criteria for that, because there is such little
Tight.
space.
So
tight.
All right, we see something.
And I'm very comfortable implementing that as well into our staff recommendation to the zoning hearing board. I think that's a point well made.
Thanks.
And what we're going to be voting on is really just presenting and approving the presentation of our recommendation to the zoning board to be included in their evaluation.
Correct.
Of the town project.
Correct.
They make the final decision.
They could ignore all of us.
So what's the total conditions there, 12?
Total of 12, well, 12 numbers, but one of those has 3 sub-conditions, but yeah, 12 total.
And you'll put those out on the website?
Yeah, I'll get those into the Dropbox folder. That'll be done tomorrow once I get this decision letter done.
Gentlemen, I've heard enough. I don't know if you have. Can I entertain an action motion on this agenda item?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for the 1004-2021 1781 Club Special Exception application, subject to the 12 conditions set forth in Seth Coon's memo dated August 3rd, 2021.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Very much.
Let me take a 5-minute, 2-3-minute.
Yeah, before we go to our final item. That's a great idea.
I don't recall which ones of you were at our May 17th, 2021 joint workshop between Council and Planning Commission. Mr. Wiley was here.
I was there.
Well, fine, you were all here. I apologize.
Conrad?
It's been so long. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. We discussed at that workshop some amendments to the town center, which is, focused here around the Valley Brook, East McMurray intersection, our conservation residential overlay and a mixed overlay residential overlay districts. As part of that discussion, we have prepared a series of ordinance amendments that are provided to you, in the codified form. My report just makes it a little bit simpler to read through and figure out what I'm talking about there. Overall changes, we would be revising the definition of height of building to include in the definition that not only is the measurement taken at the front of the building, but also the opposite side of the same building to prevent a serious angular building to be 55 feet in the back and 25 feet in the front. It would be helpful in situations where you've got major topography and you've got height concerns about buildings. That was the only overall change. In particular to the town center, we would be reducing the FAR, the floor area ratio, from 1 to 0.85. FAR means, if you've got a 1 acre lot, you can do an acre's worth of development. We would be bringing that down to 0.85. You can do 0.85 acres worth of development. It's just bringing that down slightly to somewhat reduce our developmental impact on the town center properties. Increasing the minimum maximum front yard setbacks from 20 to 25 feet to 25 to 30 feet. Just pushing everything back off the roads a little bit. I think we've all, we recognize that, we want to establish a pedestrian environment, but at the same time, you don't want to make everybody feel tight and closed when they're on the roadway. So you got to find that good balance. Removing 4-story buildings as a permitted conditional use entirely. So it was a conditional permitted use to go to 4 stories. That is going to be completely ex-nay.
Is any of that building 4-story?
That would make, technically speaking, would make the Waters an existing non-conforming building. If somebody wanted to do something similar to that, they would have to seek a variance.
So the max 3 stories in the town
I thought
center.
one of the floors was underground.
Still 4.
It's still 4. It's still measured as 4. Yeah.
Okay.
Requiring that the 3rd story of a building be stepped back 50 feet from the property line, and the 2nd story be stepped back either 20 feet from either Valley Brook or East McMurray Road. In our ordinance, we have step back slope approaches, but this establishes a little bit more clear criteria on what that ends up looking like.
Are these specific to these 2 streets? Is that what,
That's what
It's a TC.
Boundaries, the town.
Oh, yeah, because it's just in the town center. Okay,
Right,
sorry.
right.
Duh. Sorry, guys.
No, it's fine. It's not always the clearest thing in crafting ordinances. That's everything for town center. In conservation residential and mixed residential overlay, it's the same changes across the 2 districts. I just bumped them into one here in my little summary. We would be increasing our cartway width from 20 feet to 24 feet total. That includes a 24-foot wedge curve on each side. again, we wanted to establish these narrower street typologies to create, a tighter, more pedestrian-centered environment, hopefully reduce traffic speeds, but widening it a little bit.
I have to take a call, so I have to excuse
Go ahead,
myself.
go ahead.
That's okay. Addresses some of the concerns we have identified. On-street parking, bigger vehicles have a hard time navigating these tighter streets. So hopefully this will alleviate some of those concerns. Increasing our minimum lot width. This actually came directly from Dave Wiley in our workshop. From 50 feet to 75 feet, just for single-family detached homes. I think we did recognize that 50 feet was a little bit too tight.
yeah.
You could still, I guess, technically do 50 feet as a flag lot, but the general lot size width would be 75. Dave, you left as I was giving you credit for the single-family lot width from 50 to 75 feet. It was all you at the workshop.
I'll take credit for it.
Step up and state your name, please.
Please, for the record. Adding a maximum unit width for townhomes and duplexes in the MR overlay to match the CR overlay. This was an unintentional omission, I think, when the MR overlay was written.
What is the width?
It's 24-foot max per unit, 36-foot max per unit for duplexes, 24-foot max for townhomes. That's a mirror image from CR over to MR. I think when the MR district was created, that wasn't intentionally omitted. I think it's valuable to have in there so people don't build absolutely massive townhouses. We're creating an off-street parking requirement, guest parking requirement. For residential development, for residential units, we currently require 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. That can be your driveway plus your garage. I mean, it's really not that much when you think about a house and a driveway being built. So we've identified that, in some of these developments where we have tighter streets and, more homes per acre, that we don't necessarily have spaces for people to park when they're coming to visit, have parties, those types of things. So our idea, we talked with Mr. Mudry about this, is 1 parking space for every 5 residential units. And we kind of want to put language in here that isn't too restrictive, but we do want it to be evenly distributed throughout a plan. We just don't want a parking lot stuck in the middle of a residential development. So we're currently having it a max 5 contiguous spaces per single parking area. But if we get the council and they want to change that a little bit, I think that's a little bit open to interpretation. There's not a ton of research out there for guest parking area ratios. It's just not a lot of people have thought about it.
Yeah, but you could also come in and request, like, I don't want to call it a variance.
It would be a variance.
It would be a variance, but you could bring it in with your plan and say, hey, I have a location where I can put 4 here and 6 there.
Yeah.
And
I don't think we would have too much of a problem.
Yeah.
Right. But we have to establish something.
Something, yeah. No, that's a good idea. I like it.
And that's it.
Cool. So this is a proposed ordinance that has to go to council.
Public hearing.
You're making a recommendation
To council.
to council.
And I just want to raise a point that I raised in the board meeting, that especially on the town center, is a lot of these changes on the town center are being driven by the potential sale of the Peters Township Middle School. And what I said in that meeting was our school board needs to work with the township because it's in the township and the school district's best interest to create a great development there. So, hopefully the township or the school district recognizes the value of the property. We recognize, get it back on the tax rolls as something private to help the school district. Right. And secondly, to create a development that the school district and the township as governmental bodies collectively create a great product. Right. So I think this township and the school district should work collectively to create something great. And it shouldn't be driven strictly by changes to our ordinance.
I think,
and that could be done in connection with the sale, so that the school district, in connection with their sale, works with the township and says this is the kind of development we want. So hopefully the school district will listen.
I would agree with that.
That's a good comment.
Well, given that, do you have any questions for Seth? So can I hear a motion for this recommendation?
I'll make a motion for the Planning Commission zoning ordinance amendment, town center, conservation, and mixed residential overlay revisions.
I'll second that.
Made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Given that, is there any other issues that we want to talk about tonight?
No.
In that case, meeting adjourned.